For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to speak out of order for the purpose of inquiring the Majority Leader the schedule for the week to come.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With that, I will yield to the gentleman from Maryland, the Majority Leader.
I thank my friend for yielding. On Tuesday, the House will meet at 12 p.m. for morning hour debate and 2 p.m. for legislative business. Following 1 minute, the House will recess to allow for a security sweep of the House chamber prior to the President's State of the Union address. The House will meet again at approximately 8:35 p.m. in a joint session with the Senate for the purpose of receiving an address from the President of the United States. Members are advised that there will be no votes in the House on Tuesday. On Wednesday and Thursday, the House will meet at 10 a.m. for morning hour debate and 12 p.m. for legislative business. On Friday, Madam Speaker, the House will meet at 9 a.m. for legislative business, with last votes no later than 3 p.m. We will consider several bills under suspension of the rules. The complete list of those suspensions will be announced by close of business on Friday. In addition, Madam Speaker, the House will consider H.R. 840, the Veterans Access to Child Care Act, introduced by Representatives Brownlee and Higgins. This bill would make permanent the VA's child care pilot program and expand it so that veterans across the nation who are parents or grandparents have a convenient, cost-free option for child care when they have VA medical appointments. And I yield back.
Thank the gentleman from Maryland. As it relates to the suspension calendar, I know this week there was an extra bill added to the suspension calendar that wasn't on the list by close of business last week. Do you anticipate this Friday's list being amended again the following week, or should that be a complete list?
As I pointed out, additional items are possible to be added, and we said that last week, and we did add one, and it was noticed on Monday, and we voted on it today. So, in effect, we met the 3-day rule, not the 72-hour rule, but that was a suspension, and there may be others that we will add. I thank the gentleman.
I think it clearly, as a suspension, it wasn't in the traditional sense. This obviously went down. There being a sense of the House resolution, typically those are resolutions where both sides work together. Ask the gentleman, do they anticipate approaching senses of the House in a partisan way, or hopefully in a bipartisan way where we can work together to get a true sense of the House that could pass? And I yield back.
We want to move on a bipartisan basis, and the good news was this resolution, although it failed to have 2/3 vote, it did have a bipartisan vote with more than 20 Republicans voting for it, which I appreciate. And, of course, the balance voted against the resolution which said that shutdowns were bad. But we will certainly try to give as much notice as possible to the gentleman and to his party.
And I thank the gentleman. And as we approach bipartisan resolutions, we would hope that the gentleman from Maryland and his side would work with us on those. It could have been a resolution that actually passed had we been able to work together and hopefully include some language about border security. But as we look to the conference committee that's now meeting, as we talk about border security, especially being the centerpiece of the big debate over government funding, that hopefully we get agreement to. There were reports that last week the Democrat majority was going to roll out their plan for Homeland Security, and ultimately that plan wasn't in fact rolled out. Is there going to be a rollout of the party? I mean, as we had these negotiations,
will the gentleman yield?
I would yield to let the gentleman know that your side said you wouldn't negotiate during a shutdown. Obviously, the shutdown is over now. Will there be a counteroffer now put on the table? And I yield.
As the gentleman knows, the conference committee has either met or is meeting, and it's my understanding that Chairwoman Lowy is going to have a press conference after the first initial meeting, so that we are in a conference. That is good news. I'm sure the conferees are going to talk about proposals that they have to reach border security. I might say that although it appears to be the central part in terms of, from our perspective, shutdown is not about border security or any other particular issue. It is that it's a bad policy to shut down the government of the United States. But notwithstanding that, I expect that Chair Lowy will be explaining our position in the conference. I yield.
Thanks, and I look forward to hearing that proposal laid out as the House and Senate Republican and Democrat conferees meet together. I do think and have an optimistic approach that we're not that far removed from reaching a deal if we can ultimately find a way to put a real amount on the table that shows how we can secure the border as our experts, the men and women who risk their lives to secure the border, have suggested in their proposal. If we can come to a place where we can agree on a way to actually achieve border security, and that includes physical barriers. When the gentleman from Maryland, I think it was 2 weeks ago, was talking about some Democrats that were going over to the White House back then, it was said that they didn't have the authority to negotiate. Do the Democrat conferees have the authority to negotiate on behalf of the Democrat majority in the House? And I yield.
Certainly.
I appreciate the gentleman's quick candor. And I know as we wrap this up, I do want to ask an issue that a number of our members were concerned about, and hope this is not a trend, but in the House Natural Resources Committee, the majority yesterday, as they were proposing their new rules for the committee, and each committee, as we know, proposes their new rules as a new Congress is sworn in and established on the committee level. In the oath that is administered to men and women who come before the committee to testify, the original proposal suggested removing "So help you God" from the oath. One of the members on our side noticed that omission, put an amendment in place to restore "So help you God" in the oath. Fortunately, that was added back in. What I would ask the gentleman, is this going to be a trend? Is there going to be some kind of general movement by committees to try to remove "So help you God" from the oaths that are administered to witnesses?
Not as far as I know.
Well, hopefully it's not a trend that we see. I know the last few weeks have been contentious. We have a lot at stake as we try to get an agreement on something that can actually work to properly fund the government and properly secure the border. I'm glad that the conferees are finally meeting. I hope we don't see any attempt to run the clock out, because we do have a limited amount of time, although it's far more than enough time to reach an agreement if all parties are truly there in earnest, and I do think they are. I hope that they put all options on the table and listen to all the proper expert testimony that's been given, why we need to have certain amounts to secure the border and certain tactics and techniques and technology that are all going to be part of this. And hopefully at the end of that discussion, very quickly, they can reach an agreement that we can then bring to the House and Senate and pass in a bipartisan way that the President can sign to finally properly fund the government and secure our nation's border. And with that, I yield.
I share the gentleman's view. I hope the conferees can reach an agreement that will be agreeable to both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and both the House, the Senate, and the President.
Well, I thank the gentleman, and I know we look forward to welcoming the President of the United States to this House chamber on Tuesday night for the State of the Union address. Appreciate the work that we are going to do together to secure our nation's border and properly fund our government. And unless the gentleman has something else he'd like to add, I yield back the balance of my time. Madam Speaker, thank you.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
The gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourn today, it adjourn to meet at noon tomorrow. When the House adjourns on that day, it adjourn to meet at 11:30 a.m. on Monday, February 4th, 2019. And when the House adjourns on that day, it adjourned to meet at noon on Tuesday, February 5th, 2019 for morning hour debate, and 2 p.m. for legislative business.
Without objection.